reiterate it, is the idea of, in order to achieve a lot of this, we're reading kind of repetitively that it's already something that's ingrained in us. Meaning each and every one of us have that capacity within our neshama to be that Beinani, to be a person that doesn't give in to his impulse, meaning he has impulse control. While he may have weakness on the inside, he is strong and disciplined, or she is strong and disciplined to control it on the outside. One of the important parts that we mentioned many chapters ago, and welcome Isabel, I see you just joined, is the idea that in order to achieve a lot of this, even though it's ingrained in us, we need to have what's called in Hebrew bitul. Some of you heard it from me before when we spoke about it. Bitul means humility, or perhaps even more. Bitul means more like surrender. It's the idea of realizing that it's not all about me. So the more there's me, the more it's about selfish goals. I think I mentioned before, the Rebbe once received a letter. So the Rebbe received many, many letters. He actually received the second to most mail in the whole United States, right? Second to the president, went to 770 Eastern Parkway. And in the earlier years, the Rebbe responded to all of these letters. But in later years, obviously the Rebbe's time was so limited with the amount of requests and demands and people. A lot of times the Rebbe was obviously very sharp and brilliant. A lot of times he would respond to people by simply circling words on their letter. So if someone would say, should I do this or should I do that? The Rebbe would just circle the response out of the two. So one person wrote to the Rebbe a long letter like, why is all this happening to me? I don't have a nice house, and I don't like my job, and literally like 5 paragraphs. You actually see the person years later, recently posted their letter, and just complaining. I mean, that's what we do. We love doing that. And the Rebbe, all he did, I think it was a woman who was complaining about her life, and the Rebbe, all he did was circle the first letter of every paragraph, which was the letter I. It was, I don't have this, and I am expecting, it was all about the I. And the Rebbe says, the Rebbe didn't even say, but the Rebbe just circled the I, and saying that the key to see your personal growth and to see success and blessings is removing some of the I and replacing it with a little more humility. So that idea of bitul is a very powerful idea. It's really a crux to understand Tanya, is really understanding what surrender means. It's not a weakness, it's actually a strength. I was just reading a story recently. The Rebbe would share this story often, that in Russia, the police, the FBI in Russia, they were called the NKVD. They were like the KGB in Russia. They were called the NKVD, and then the KGB. They changed names a few times. But they were able to stop whoever they wanted and ask for papers. And if they don't like the way they respond, they could just arrest them. And that's enough of a crime to be sent to Siberia or the gulags. So there was a group of Jews that were walking, and they were coming from a Hasidic Farbrengen. They were on a high. They were feeling very spiritual. And the words, I have the story in front of me. Where is it? Hold on. And the words, I'll just say it in the Russian. I'm not familiar with the Russian. So a police officer asked them, which means who goes there? Like, who are you? And the answer of the Hasidim, one of the Hasidim answered, Bittul idiot, which means Bittul goes there. His response was, it's Bittul. Like when the guy was asking, who are you? His response was Bittul. He was coming from a Hasidic Farbrengen where they were talking about Bittul and putting yourself on the side and achieving this Bittul. And that's what he felt like. So the Rebbe explained, like, he knew he had to be honest to the police officer, so he was really being honest. He looked inside himself. What does he have? Who is he? Bittul. That was his response. And when we're living in our world, we have to really realize that we have to look at ourselves and see something greater than just us and not really be focusing so much on the I. Okay, so now hopefully we'll understand a little more of this concept of Beinoni and Tzaddik, what is within our reach and what is not. Even if a person is attaining a really high level, a person has to realize it's not really about what they are attaining and the feeling and the meaning that they receive. Even if a person is wanting to do the right thing because it'll bring them closer in a relationship with God, it's actually very altruistic, it's very pure, but it's ultimately not the main goal. The main goal is to do what God wants because Hashem wants you to. So it's not, let me try to be a tzaddik because I'll attain a higher, lofty level. It's still the eye that's involved, even though it's a virtuous eye, it's a nice eye, but it's still eye. The ultimate purpose, we'll see as we flow through Tanya, is to putting yourself on the side and get the job done, and doing it because Hashem wants you to, not because it feels good, not because it scores you bigger points and gives you a bigger portion in the world to come, or because of any other goal. It's simply because I love God. Similar to in a relationship. When a person honors the other person, it's not because, oh, I'm going to score more points so I could come back later from work tomorrow because I helped clear up today. That's not the reason why you're helping in the house, and that's not the reason why you're honoring the other person. It's because they're part of you, and you put yourself on the side to honor them. And the same is also in a relationship with Hashem, with God Almighty. It's for the same reason. All right, so I'm going to be sharing my screen. We're in the middle of chapter 14, and if someone wants to speak up just to remind me exactly, does it make sense that we're up to section 2, or do we get a little further than section 2? Section 2? Okay. All right. So then in the I had the bookmark on the pages. It looks familiar, so I just wasn't sure if we learned that together. I'm going to actually try over the next 40 minutes or so to finish the chapter. I'm really excited to finish chapter 14. It finishes that idea. There's a nice summary at the end. So to get through it, we're going to have to read a lot, but I think it's going to be very meaningful. And next week, God willing, start chapter 15, which is really, really a powerful and awesome chapter. It's our favorite. So with that, I'll be sharing my screen. We're going to be on, if you're looking in your book, it's going to be on page 172. If you're looking on the screen, it's smack in the middle of the page. All right, here we go. Section 2. Why you probably won't become a tzaddik. Having taught us that a behavioral perfection, which is the Beinoni, because we know the Beinoni, they're not perfect on the inside. That's a tzaddik. That's an emotional perfection. Beinoni is the behavioral perfection. They're able to not necessarily be perfect, but they could do perfect. So it's immediately attainable. The Tanya now explains why emotional mastery, which is the tzaddik, is for most of us beyond reach. This capacity for instant change is not so with matters of the heart. In the deep core of your animal soul, namely that evil and self-gratification should actually be despised in your heart, meaning to have such a far degree that sin or anything that is not for God is absolutely distant and despised. That's like on the level of a tzaddik. Either detested utterly, as in the case with a complete tzaddik, or detested but not utterly, as in the case of an incomplete tzaddik. While you might be able to conjure up these emotions sometimes, they cannot be achieved in a truly genuine or consistent way, unless you develop an immense and powerful love of God. As we learned in chapter 9, this can only be achieved by the experience of pleasurable love. So just to explain this a little bit at length, we know that there's a fiery love and a pleasurable love. The difference is a fiery love is when you're passionate, you're yearning for something, you're almost desperate towards someone or something. Usually you don't have it yet. You're trying to achieve it. You're trying to get there. So it's very fiery because you're homesick for it. You're lovesick. Pleasurable love is when you're in the moment, when you have the person that you want to be with, when you're on a date with the love of your life, when you're in the moment. In our context, when you're in that moment of intimacy with God, when you're in that prayer, when you're in that special bond with God, that's a pleasurable love. Because you're not yearning for something, you have it. You're in there. It's more of a calm love rather than a honeymoon style. But to reach, that's a tzaddik. A tzaddik has a level of a pleasurable love because they're in the moment. They experience that deep, true love, and it's a calm style of love. But to reach the level of a tzaddik, you must experience pleasurable love, which is to take pleasure in God alone in a way that is a foretaste in the world that is coming. As the sages of blessed memory said, you shall see your next world in your lifetime. So just in Judaism, I'll explain this briefly, we know we have the idea of our world and the world to come. In the Mishnah, it actually says this world is like a corridor, like a hallway, to prepare yourself to get ready to go into the next world. But ultimately, we don't live in this world in order to get to the next world. We live in this world in order to make a difference in this world. But a tzaddik is almost experiencing the next world, which is a much more blissful spiritual world, is able to experience that world here. There's a story of Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, who was a disciple of the second Hasidic Rebbe. His name was the Maggid of Mezrich. And after he died, people looked at Rabbi Menachem Mendel as the Rebbe. They were even the author of the Tanya, which is the book we're learning, chose Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk to be his Rebbe. But Rabbi Menachem Mendel moved to the Holy Land, and they appointed the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, to be in charge of the Jews in Russia. But they say when he moved to the Holy Land, there was some random person that went on a big home or a mountain in Jerusalem and started blasting the shofar. Now it says that when Mashiach comes, the shofar will be blasted. So people started screaming, it wasn't Rosh Hashanah, and this guy is blowing the shofar. So people were certain Mashiach is here. The end of our suffering, the end of our misery. In the 1700s in Israel, there was utter poverty. People were dying from hunger in Israel. And this was the end. So Rabbi Menachem Mendel heard the commotion outside, people screaming, Mashiach is here, Mashiach is here. So he opened his window by his home. He stuck his head outside, and he said, no, it's not Mashiach. So he was on a caliber that he was able to taste, to smell, to see, and sense if Mashiach is here. But an interesting part of the story is he could have smelled it from inside his house. Why do you have to open his window to smell it outside, to see if the sense of Mashiach is there? And the Rebbe explained that's because in his house, he was actually experiencing the energy of Mashiach already. Meaning a tzaddik, someone on that level, already in their environment, accomplish and achieve a very high stature of the world to come, but yet it's not yet experienced in the rest of the world. So this pleasure of beloved is experienced by a tzaddik. They have that in this world already. If a person's pleasure is in the worship of God alone, and he has no desire for self-gratification, he has really attained the level of the afterlife in this world. So do a test. Try to spend 24 hours, and your only true enjoyment and love and passion and pleasure is in God. If you don't have any other motives, you don't care for any other thing other than God, you're a tzaddik. But I'll be very honest, it's going to be very rare for us to achieve that because we have our own wants. We have our own desires. We eat because we're hungry. It's just a fact. We're not eating because it's going to get me closer to a relationship with God. We have pleasure in this world for eating a nice chocolate bar. And even if I'm not eating it, I just want it, even if I'm not going to eat it. So to have this level of your true pleasure is simply in God. It's a high level, and that's a tzaddik. But not every person merits this. The Alter Rebbe is giving it to us in a very kind way, saying it's not your job to be a tzaddik. It's your job to be a beinoni. It's your job to experience behavioral control, impulse mastery, impulse control. Because it's not much an achievement of human worship out of a kind of reward received from God, as we will see at the end of the chapter. Pleasure, beloved, is compared to the experience of the next world, not only due to its unusual intensity, but also to stress that most people are unable to reach it. If you do get there, it's more of a reward from God for your efforts than something you achieved entirely through your own merits. So just know that if a person has it, they shouldn't be going around and saying, look at me, I was able to achieve it. It's actually a gift of God that he gave you the ability to attain this level. As the verse states, I have given you the service of your priesthood as a gift, meaning what's in Hebrew known as the Cohen, the tribe of the Cohens, which represented the Jewish people in the temple, and the Cohens had the power of giving priestly blessings, etc. It's not something that they earned, it's something that they were gifted from God, like it says in the Torah in the book of Numbers, where priesthood is a metaphor for the love of God, as it's explained elsewhere in Tanya Geras HaKodesh, so we'll get there later. But a Cohen had to be a person of true love, and they had real love. And so the Cohen is a gift. And so therefore the love of God to reach this level of pleasurable love is a gift also. This insight will enable us to answer our remaining questions from chapter 1. So if I'm not mistaken, from here to the end of the chapter, it'll really be focusing on answering some questions that we had, giving you some insight, and then we'll end the class with a conclusion. And here's the question. That is why Job said, Master of the universe, you have created tzaddikim. So for those that don't know, Job, or in Hebrew his name was Eov, lived many, many years ago. It's actually a debate if he was actually a real person or not. But there's an incredible book called the Book of Job about horrible suffering that Job had. He had children, he had wealth, and he lost it all. He lost his children, he lost his wealth. And he would speak to God about his trials, challenges, and tests. So the question we had on a quote from this book of Job is like this. In chapter 1, we asked, how could Job imply that God creates a person as a righteous when there's surely something left to an individual's free choice? Right, Thomas? We speak about at length the idea of free choice that we are given. Now, when we have free choice, if Job is saying that God created us to be a tzaddik, Master of the universe, you have created tzaddikim, what's left up to us? If it's God deciding if we're up to the task of being a tzaddik, what happened to our free choice? That was the question we had in chapter 1. But now we understand that free choice only extends to our behavior. We have the choice how to speak. We have the choice how to act. We have the choice what to allow our thoughts to think about, to fantasize on. This is whether or not we choose to become a Beinoni. We do not have a free choice over our deep core, whether we will consistently experience pleasurable love and become a tzaddik. The ability to reach the level of a tzaddik is really a question of natural disposition, of how we were created, as Job put it. This is a very powerful line. What we're saying is that each and every one of us have free choice. But to what extent is our free choice is to be a Beinoni. We have the choice to discipline ourselves, to master our thought, speech, and action. But if we're going to be a tzaddik, that's not really up to our choice. We can work on it. We should strive, as we'll see soon. But ultimately, it's a natural a gift. It's a gift that God put into our natural disposition if we will be a tzaddik, as Job said. As it is taught in the Tikkunei Zohar, which is part of the Kabbalistic book of the Zohar, that among the souls of Israel, there are many levels and types. There are Hasidim, which are pious ones, Giborim, which are strong ones, who overpower their evil inclination, masters of the Torah, Nevi'im, which are the prophets, Tzaddikim, which are the righteous. Look there in the Tikkunei Zohar. Let me just explain the next paragraph, and then I'll give you a little bit of insight on this. The Tikkunei Zohar teaches that different souls are suited to varying styles of worship. Some souls were created with the power to become tzaddikim. Others weren't. Let me just go back to explain. In the Mishnah, Ethics of the Fathers, I gave a class on it recently before Shavuot in May, and wow, we're already in July. So I guess a couple months ago. And one of the most powerful quotes was from Ben Zoma, who says that who is a truly strong person? One who controls their inclination, controls their spirit. It's a very powerful line because that's true strength. It's not someone that could bench press 150 or someone who could arm wrestle, etc., or someone who could bully others. A truly strong person is someone who could control their temper. So there's different styles of souls. There are people who are strong, which means they have more of a capacity to control their temper. There are people who are Hasidim, they're more pious. There are those that are masters of Torah, they're just born with a gift of Torah study. There are those that were born with a gift of prophecy. There's different levels. So what we're saying is that the souls were given different styles based on the personality that they were to achieve. So this will also enable us to explain the repetition in the oath. So I explained this in our introduction to this chapter. The oath, the soul when it's coming down into this world, it's given almost a repetitive oath. The soul is told by God, be a tzaddik and don't be a rasha. Isn't it obvious? Once it's already telling me be a tzaddik, you don't have to tell me don't be a rasha. Of course, if I'm being a tzaddik, I'm not a rasha. So the question we had, let's see, is just going to reiterate it. This will also enable us to explain the repetition of the oath which the soul swears before birth. Be a tzaddik and do not be a rasha. At first glance, this seems bizarre, because if the soul has already been made to swear an oath to be a tzaddik, what is the point in making him swear a further oath Don't be a Rasha. We did not pose this question in chapter 1, but now we can answer it. So the answer is, rather, since not everyone is privileged to become a tzaddik, it's not enough just to promise to be a tzaddik, a task in which the soul may never succeed, meaning we should strive to be a tzaddik, but we have to face a little bit of reality, and maybe we don't have that gift. For a person does not have a significant degree of free choice, whether or not he will experience a steady, pleasurable love for God, or if he will, on a consistent basis, absolutely detest evil, these two qualities being the hallmark of a tzaddik. So if you want to know in a nutshell, a tzaddik has a hallmark of, number one, detesting evil. He hates anything that is not standing for God. Number two, he has this consistent, pleasurable love. He's living in a state of ecstasy of love and pleasure of God. That's a tzaddik's hallmark. But now, even though we should strive for that, but if we don't have the free choice to be on that level, we have free choice in our behavior, but not free choice if we're being a tzaddik. So while on one hand they say be a tzaddik, naturally we may not always be able to attain that. So therefore, listen to this beautiful paragraph. Since the soul may not succeed with the first oath, it is made to swear a second one. If you try to become a tzaddik and do not succeed, at the very least, do not be a rasha and actually sin. Rather, make sure you remain a beinani. Because in this matter, listen to this line. This is a very important line. Every person does have the freedom of choice and autonomy to overcome the desires which arise in his heart and to win over his impulse of evil, so that he will not be a rasha even for a moment in his entire life. Very powerful line. We each have the power to be, and the free choice, the freedom to be a beinani. So therefore, let's just finish this and I'll answer the questions. And this consistency is possible both in the area of turn away from evil, refraining from the negative, and in the realm of do good, positive behavior. And good refers to nothing other than Torah, namely the study of the Torah, which is equal to them all, as we have discussed at length in chapter 5. The most intimate bond which you have with God is through studying the Torah, and this is available at every spare moment for the beinani. So just to explain one thing, if I were to ask you, July 1st, a lot of people are moving. Actually, in our community, there's been a lot of young families that, thanks to COVID, families have to move out. Some families are moving in. So it's a very interesting time. Actually, on Friday, I put up 10 mezuzahs on different homes from people moving in. There's on masks and social distance. It's a new reality. But if I were to tell you, what do you do first? If I'm moving into a new home, do you first clean out the dirtiness, or do you first paint and put in your furniture? Obviously, what do you do first is clean out. In terms of spiritual growth, what that means is a lot of us have, not a lot of us, we all have schmutz. We all have dirt and things that are less than perfect. We have to clean that out. It's called teshuvah. We need it. We need to do it. It's important. It's a constant work. Every night when I say the Shema, there's paragraphs asking God for forgiveness and asking orally, we actually verbally ask for forgiveness from other people in case I hurt them today. Because we all have schmutz, that is ego and anger and lust, and to whatever degree that we need to work on. But so that's a part of our process, that we need to get rid of the evil inside of us, stay away from evil, push away the darkness. And then there's another part that is to fill up the home with beautiful furniture, which in our term means decorate our life with mitzvahs, do the good. It's not only stay away from the evil, clean out the schmutz, it's also do the positive. Both are important, and you shouldn't wait on one for the other, meaning don't wait to clean out your house in order to decorate it. In Judaism, you're supposed to increase in mitzvahs, and you'll see it'll help you get rid of the schmutz. And that's why Chabad is very strong on getting people to do mitzvahs, even if they're not doing it consistently. It's a drive-through tefillin or a one-time Shabbos candles, whatever it is, but one mitzvah will lead to another. And when you increase in mitzvah observance, you will see slowly how the godly soul is getting stronger, wants it and feels good, and the other side gets weaker. So the way that works for here is that we each have the capacity to be a Beinoni, which means to have the discipline and the control to do the right thing and to turn away from doing the negative. We each have that power. Let me just see. I think a question came. I'm actually surprised here. A tzaddik would have hate for anything. Interesting, but rather a deep understanding. So no, so interesting. When it comes to something that's a very good question, Maddie, because you're right. Hate. Let me just get this charger. Hate is actually a very strong word. You're right, but I think somewhere it's actually going to talk about that. Anything that, if it's a very, I'm trying to think where in the Tanya talks about it. We'll get to it, but in short, anything that is opposing God is opposing the tzaddik. It's almost, if it's an enemy of God, and that may be a strong term also, it's an enemy of the tzaddik also. And an enemy of God is anything that's klipa, anything that covers over the truth and tries to suck and receive sustenance, to give to a negativity. It's almost like spiritual terrorism, where they're terrorizing the good of people. Anything, it's a very good question, Maddie. I don't think I'm doing justice in giving you the proper answer, but you're right. Hate is a strong term, but it's the correct term. It's detested by the tzaddik. The tzaddik can't imagine using negative terminology. So he doesn't hate the person, he's hating the words. He's hating the action that's being done. And he's, of course, we're going to separate in chapter 32, it's the chapter of love. Love is at the base of everything. And we need to be strong in separating the person from the action. The tzaddik doesn't hate the person. The tzaddik hates an action that is being done. And it's more the sin that is detested by the tzaddik. So by that time we get to it, I may already have a white beard, but we will get to it, God willing, in our journey through the Tanya. Okay, section 3. Yes, testing the action of behavior rather than the person makes sense. Yeah, so I'm sorry for not explaining that before, but that's for sure. He doesn't hate the person. He hates anything that stands opposite of God. So sin, and it's something that it's not in the terminology of the tzaddik, and most of us are not there. So don't get stuck on it. It's realizing that it's not really our job to hate evil. It's our job to control ourselves from doing the evil. And it's okay to enjoy it, meaning it's okay to have a pleasure. It's different to act on it and we have the control to overpower it. I think I skipped the Hasidic thought just because they're not in the Kindle edition. I will say them. Hasidic thought. Let's see. Shira, do you have the book in front of you? If you have the book, do you want to read a Hasidic thought on 173? All right, we'll come back to you unless you could see it. But Robin, do you want to read a Hasidic thought on 173 in the book?
Yes.
And then Shira, if you're available for 174, we could do that one. But go ahead, Robin.
I definitely have a dormant love for God, which is found.
I can't hear you. I don't know if it's on my end.
No, it's me. It's me.
Oh, okay, I can hear you.
I definitely have a dormant love for God, which is found in my divine soul. I might also develop a palpable love for God during prayer or at peak moments, but my failure to sustain that intensity of love on a permanent basis shows that my animal soul's deep core remains unrefined.
Awesome. Okay, good. So we still have some animal instincts in there. Shira, are you available? If you have the book on 174, there's a nice practical lesson. You want to read it? Okay, so 174 reads like this: practical lessons. You will probably never achieve self-mastery over your deep emotional core, which seeks self-gratification. Unless your soul was built for that, it's not really possible. But that shouldn't stop you trying. Take time in your week to meditate on ideas that will help you to change your inner core at least a little. Don't stop trying just because it's not fully attainable. Work on it little by little. Meditate on the emotional core going on inside of you. Okay, so section 3 is going to address a very interesting thing. Now that we just had a very important reality check, that it's not our free choice to be a tzaddik, it's only our free choice to be a Beinoni, that to control our thought, speech, and action. Why was the soul even given an oath to be a tzaddik? It's not in our realistic achievements. So here's a really good part. Don't stop from trying to be a tzaddik. Work on it. And there's times that you will attain it, meaning not permanently, but there will be times when you will feel a tzaddik moment. And that's a really nice part. Let's see this section 3. I think this is the last section. I'll try to get through it so that we could end the chapter. Don't give up on becoming a tzaddik. The sobering reality check that you will probably never reach the level of tzaddik doesn't mean that you should stop trying. Before you were born, your soul swore an oath that it would always try to be a tzaddik, even if it would never get there. That is not the case of banging your head against the wall, trying to succeed in a task which is doomed from the start. Even if you can't achieve the emotions of a tzaddik in their full depth and on a consistent basis, you can achieve them partially, on occasion. And such an experience will be immensely beneficial, as we shall see. A tzaddik takes pleasure in worshiping God like you would enjoy a plate of good food. And he is disgusted by the idea of self-gratification, just as you are disgusted by dirt and filth, right? We don't like getting dirty. And if we get a mud full of dirt in our face, we feel disgusting. That's what the tzaddik feels with self-gratification. The key then to fulfilling your oath is to spend some time contemplating the emptiness of physical pleasure and the joy of worship. What does that mean? Nevertheless, let's see it inside. You ought to designate at least some time to seek advice for your soul, to develop a disgust for evil. It's an interesting expression. Let's see. It is not expected of you to despise evil consistently, like a tzaddik, but you should do regular emotional work towards that goal. For example, to counter sexual temptation, our sages advise that at the moment an unwanted urge arises, to look at a woman as a pouch full of feces. Oh, interesting. And similar ideas. Let's see what that means. The mind game which this teaching plays is a supplant to an image that the man finds attractive with one which is naturally repulsive to him. Logically, there is no reason why a man should find a woman attractive. As Rashi comments on this passage, that male attraction to the female is an irrational divine decree. Similarly, there is no logical reason why we should be particularly repulsed by feces, a mixture of water, cellulose, I don't know exactly what that is, and minerals, but that is human nature. Male attraction, let's finish this idea, can easily be turned off by something he finds unattractive. Playing on this weakness, the sages suggested that when a man's sexual attraction is undesirably strong, he should imagine the woman's intestines full of the very same fecal substance that he finds naturally repulsive. Perhaps this change of perspective will burst the bubble of his excitement. So let's say if a person, let me just try to explain this. Let's just take the next part. So too, when tempted by food, he can imagine how all delicious foods and delicacies end up as a pouch full of feces. Thinking what a delicious delicacy is going to look like after it has been digested may remove you from the spell of its allure and stop you from wanting to eat it. The psychology here is that delight and repulsion are so very opposite that as soon as something is associated with repulsive imagery, it will be hard for you to find it delightful again. This is very interesting. You know, like when you're eating a good bowl of cholent. Does anyone know what cholent is? And then someone says a comment that is just makes you not have an appetite anymore. So if a person is, God forbid, let's put it out in the open. If the Tanya did, if a person is having inappropriate thoughts and, God forbid, fantasizing an affair, let's put it out there, and it's forbidden. It's actually one of the big 10, right? It's in the 10 Commandments to be honest and honorable in your marriage and not to cheat. He puts it together with another mitzvah or sin, which is of forbidden foods, but each one obviously stands alone. So let's take one at a time. So you have this desire for someone, and it's inappropriate. You need to stop that desire. So you should dig into yourself why this marriage, why this affair, this attraction is wrong. So you should contemplate that there's nothing even there. It's disgusting. Think of the innards. If it's about forbidden food, think of what it's going to turn out to be, or think of the innards in that person. There's nothing really there, and even though it's not full, meaning you're not really there, but it's there to weaken that attraction that you know is inappropriate. Meaning, in the heart of hearts, you know it's inappropriate. You don't want it, but you're attracted by it. So it's think in your mind how this is not. There's nothing even there to be attracted to, and you have to meditate on it. Shira, so now I see a problem with audio. You're on your side. Got it. No problem. That should do the trick. Like hypnotherapy, right? Exactly. So it's meditation. Is hypnotherapy, that would be considered meditation, right? Repulsive imagery. So we're using, yeah, so exactly, Shira and Manny. It's heavy, and I wish I could do more justice in explaining it, but it's the idea that removing the temptation from you through thinking, through meditation. So let's just go on a Big Mac. A Big Mac is forbidden by Jewish law if it's has cheese and meat, because we don't mix those. So it looks really delicious, and the billboards or the commercials make it look like really attractive. But what you have to put in your mind is realizing that ultimately, what is it going to come to be? It's what's really the substance? It's nothing. So you have to meditate on why, even though it may look pretty, it may look attractive as a sandwich, it's not even something I should be going towards. So even though ultimately you do have that attraction and that hunger towards it, you should take time to meditate on why it's not something you want or something you need. Let me just see some more comments coming in. Oh, thank you, Maddie. I don't know what a clockwork orange is. Robin, you want to explain that? What is that? I don't know. I'm sorry.
It's a book that was made into a movie,
Okay.
and it's what we're learning right now makes me
Okay.
think of that. The protagonist is a rapist, murderer, horrible, evil man who was taken prisoner, and every time he'd have an image of what he wanted to do to somebody, he would be punished by some horrible thing.
Okay, thank you. So, and by the way, I'm only explaining the one side of it, but of course the other side is the same. Just like a man has an attraction or a fantasy for a woman, God forbid, the same could be the opposite way. And not necessarily is it something to be ashamed of, meaning it could be something natural that I have a nefesh habahamis, I have that animal soul that's making a certain desire and fantasy want to come up, but it's your choice to allow it in. So number one is push it away. But number two is also meditate. It's like almost digging in a little deeper for the woman having an attraction to a man, or for a man having an inappropriate attraction to a woman that they don't belong to each other, meaning they're not in a relationship that it's kosher, not only kosher, it's a mitzvah. So let's just take one more step back. If it's your spouse, it's actually a mitzvah to love them, and you have to, meaning it's something you have to work on. You have to go on dates. You have to have communication. It's something that if you don't have love in your relationship, both physical attraction, emotional attraction, psychological attraction, the 5 love languages, you need to get help and spend the money needed for that help, because there's no better investment than the investment in your relationship. But if it's an inappropriate relationship, you have to stop it at all costs. So yes, getting therapy, but the Tanya is telling you, number one, you have the control as a Beinoni to stop that action. You could stop it right now. You have the control right now. You have the control to stop your speech. You have the control to stop your fantasies. That's in your control. But beyond that, take a tzaddik step here as well, because we were given an oath at our birth, before our birth, to be a tzaddik, which means take time to have a tzaddik moment, which what we're explaining to be over here is to try to dig into your emotional self and meditate on why this is not even something I want. And by doing that, it's removing that emotional impulse towards it. Let's go on a little more. The same principle applies for all pleasures in this world. The wise person sees the future outcome of them, that in the end they rot, becoming worm-infested refuse. So it's in the Mishnah. It says a wise person is someone that sees the outcome, right? Most of us just act on what we see now. A wise person sees the bottom line. Actually, because I'm Canadian, I'll just quote anyone who knows who the great one is in hockey. His name is Wayne Gretzky, and he was number 99. I grew up watching him. He played for the Edmonton Oilers, and then he came here to California because of Hollywood. So he joined the LA Kings and then St. Louis Blues. I could give you all his stats, but and he retired as a New York Ranger. So he made his rounds. But when they asked him what, actually it's a quote from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs says, "How will you always be ahead of the game, ahead of the pack?" With Apple, they're not just competing; they set the tone of the future with their technology. And Steve Jobs, I think in the late 90s, he said it's because, or maybe it was in the zeros. He said, "I learned from Wayne Gretzky that when Wayne Gretzky was learning how to play hockey by his father Walter on his pond in Ontario, his father taught him that all the kids, they're going to run towards where the puck is. So they're going to chase the puck. I want you to chase not after the puck, but look where the puck is heading towards and go there." Meaning the puck is not even there yet, but you see the angle that the puck is going to end up there. That's where I want you to go. And many, many times, I mean, he played against Montreal in the Stanley Cup Finals in 1993. He lost. The Canadiens won. My hometown won. And I remember that very clearly. But there's many times in those highlights when he was on a breakaway all alone with no one around him because everyone was running after the puck and he was running to where the puck was heading, and there he had open space to skate and to score. So how do we get into talking about hockey over here? So the point is, a wise person sees the future, what's headed. So you're planning not for only the now, you're taking a step based on the result at the end. So over here, the way the Alter Rebbe is explaining it is, look at what's going to end up being with that Big Mac. It's going to be rotting and just adding more fat and going to be in the grave. While that's pretty harsh and heavy and not something we should be thinking about all the time, and we shouldn't be thinking about all the time, but every now and then to dig away in your emotions and maybe once a week spend 5 minutes just thinking, why do I even want that? There's nothing even there of substance. All it is disgust. It just helps dig into your emotions a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Shira, push away with both hands. That's a good analogy. The meditation piece of it is that love is deep inside of us, and the outside impulses that we think make us happy actually don't. Love that analogy of the direction of the puck. Oh, thank you. Awesome. But that's exactly it, Maddie. So we can't work on that meditation every day, all day, because we're Bainani. We're working on our action and our behavior. But you should spend time to be a tzaddik and meditate for your emotions and your psychological well-being. So I'm hoping that's understood. I do want to get to the end of the chapter. Okay, thank you. So far, I see good comments. So we all know that eventually, towards the bottom of the page on the Kindle, will eventually become so let me repeat. We all know what will eventually become of all our pleasures. The question is how powerfully we're able to visualize the fact at the moment of temptation. A wise person sees the outcome of his potential actions before he indulges and successfully avoids unwanted temptation. Let's just take this in very simple examples. If a person is, God forbid, in an affair, they know that if they're going to get caught, it can mean an end to their marriage, which they don't want, meaning they want to stay in a marriage. They love their children. They don't want to cause their whole family. And we see, unfortunately, what happens when these things happen, God forbid. It breaks and tears apart a family. So, of course, they don't want it. But they can't help themselves. They want it. They kind of want it. So, but if they take time to think about the repercussions, what's going to happen, they could actually be repulsed by that person trying to tear them away. They could look at them with disgust. That's what we're trying to get to over here, not to have that constant, but to have a tzaddik-like moment where you're disgusted by this because it's working on making you trip and fall. So while this is not something we attain all the time, you should have a tzaddik-like meditation once a week or once a month to try to dig into that emotions to have that perspective every now and then. using these types of meditations, even those of us who will never become tzaddikim, can begin to chip away at the deep emotional core of our animal soul and tone down our desire for self-gratification a few notches. In that way, we fulfill the oath sworn by our souls before birth, at least to try to be a tzaddik. In addition, let's try to see if we can finish. In addition to your attempts to despise evil, you should also carry out meditations in the opposite direction, to take pleasure and joy in God. So this is the opposite meditation. This is the positive one, to meditate on how good God is, by meditating on the greatness of the blessed infinite light of God to the best of your ability. To try to fulfill your oath to be a tzaddik, you need to try A, to be disgusted by evil, and B, to take real pleasure and joy in the worship of God. Practically, you do this by meditating on the ideas that will produce these emotions. So you have to meditate ideas, and the idea will develop the emotion, right? That's Tanya 101, that's Chabad. You start in the mind, and when you think about something deeply, it'll develop a feeling. So if you think about something, how it's repulsive and disgusting, you could develop that, and you will be repulsed by it. If you think about God and how God, infinite of light God is, and God chose to create a world and put me in the world and gave me the chance to make a difference, and God is infinite and he's asking for a relationship with me, that's an incredible meditation to realize I have so much to do in this world, and it develops a love and an honor to be participating in this relationship with God. Even though you know deep down that you will never reach this level of pleasure and joy in the worship of God, genuinely and consistently. So what's the point? I'm not going to fully be there, except as a fond hope. Nevertheless, you must do your best to fulfill the oath you were made to swear before birth, which is to be a tzaddik. And you and God will do what is good in his eyes. You must do what you can to reach the elusive level of tzaddik. Whether or not you succeed is up to God. Meaning that's going to be a gift from God. But don't stop trying to have these tzaddik-like moments and meditate and chip away on your emotional self. But even if you do not succeed in becoming a tzaddik, these types of meditations will make the struggle of fighting the Yetzer Hara easier for you. Once you have at least tasted the higher states of emotional refinement, despising evil even a little bit, and taking pleasure in God even a little bit, the entire composition of the animal soul is weakened. You begin to crack its foundations. It's an amazing thing. Once you uncover the weakness of the animal soul, and it's just a little bit that you say, I don't need this, I don't want this, it's why am I in this? Meditate on it. And once you crack it open a little bit, you're weakening it, and you could chip away at it. And also, even if your ability to despise evil and take pleasure in God lacks permanence and authenticity, ultimately, the reality is that habit rules all. Habit, listen to that expression. It's from Rabbeinu Yonah, who lived in the 1100s. And habit becomes second nature. So even if it's not authentic, meaning this despising of evil, it's not real, it's not genuine, you know it, it's not permanent. But what happens is when you do something in a routine, it becomes natural for you to do, right? At the beginning, when you're doing exercise, it's uncomfortable and you're not flexible enough, but eventually you almost yearn for it. Like you don't feel good after a day of not exercising if you've been doing it for a few months. It's becoming part of your regimen and your routine. You become used to it. So if you will make it your habit to carry out the meditations to detest evil, then out of habit alone, you will begin to detest it genuinely, at least a little. Attaining some of this positive emotions of the tzaddik, however, is more difficult, since the above tactics we used for negative emotions won't work. Taking pleasure in God is not easy for people who are preoccupied with the experiences of the five senses. For this, you would probably need special assistance from God. Okay, we're just going to try to finish. I'm sorry for going a little fast. I do want to try to finish the chapter, but there's a lot of good. This last one is really important, the idea of habit. Realize that even if it's not authentic, but do it out of habit, and you'll see results just because of the habit alone, which is an awesome thing. Okay. I will do the last couple paragraphs. Here we go. And when you will make it your habit to rejoice with your soul in God through meditating upon the greatness of God, since with an awakening from below, there's an awakening from above, Perhaps with all this effort, a ruach, which is a spirit, will pour upon you from on high. So we know that there's water reflects. Water is a reflection. Whatever you show a face in water, the water will reflect it right back. In a relationship, if you're feeling something intense, that will be reflected in the spouse as well. With God also, if you take a stride in the right direction of meditation and working on yourself, God will, when we're awakened from below, we trigger that same response from above. God wants us just to try, to start, to instigate. And God says, I'm here and I'll give you a gift from above. Unlike the negative emotions of detesting evil, which you can learn yourself, the positive emotion of a pleasurable rejoicing of God requires some additional spirit granted to you through the grace of heaven. Okay, we'll finish with this last paragraph. While this might come to you as a result of your sustained efforts, it is by no means guaranteed. That is why the Tanya stated earlier that a person does not have a significant degree of free choice, whether he'll experience a steady, pleasurable love. Awesome. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I actually have to end here. It's a 7 minutes early, but this is amazing. I will continue next week, and God willing, give you an important summary of these chapters and an important intro to chapter 15, which is our favorite. I'm really excited we're getting up to it, and that'll be next Wednesday at 9:30.